Hey guys, welcome back. Ricky here. I apologize to those who are professionals and you guys are looking for very different opinions on knives. I'm not the professional knife sharpener, not the professional chef. So again, my needs are very specific to my circumstances and my lifestyle. And so if you guys are okay with that, keep on watching. So today we're going to talk about the utility knives. And the utility knives and prep knives are really becoming very similar. They're kind of, there's not really a fine line that defines a utility knife versus a prep knife. So utility knives tend to be a little bit longer, where prep knives tend to top out at 5.5 inches. Utility knives can go for as long as 7 inches long or so. And the handles on utility knives tend to be a little bit larger overall than prep knives. Alright, so the first knife we have here is the Miyabi Artisan. This here is the 5-inch version. The handle is a little bit larger overall than the prep version, and the blade is 5 inches long versus 5.25 inches long. So they're very similar. Also, the blade profile on the Artisan and most of the utility knives in general are a bit straighter. They don't really have much of a belly or a curve to the belly. SG2 core steel, fit and finish is spectacular, and a really well proportioned knife. Overall, this knife is very comfortable in the hand and very stable on the cutting board. The next knife we have here is the Kramer by Yaxell Carbon version. Again, it's a 5-inch blade. Very nice knife. The fit and finish of this knife is very good. I've always liked the carbon versions of these knives. So this is a carbon blade, so it will form a patina and potentially rust over time if you don't keep it dry after usage and after cutting acidic foods. I love the choice of materials on these knives. You got a brass bolster and brass rivets with the Kramer crest in the center. This also has the same taper tang that you will find on the chef's knives. It's really incredible to see the level of detail put into this knife. The contouring of the handle is spectacular. You will not find anything wrong with this knife. This is the Wusthof Classic Icon utility blade. It's a 6-inch blade. It does feel a little bit longer than the rest of the 6-inch blades here. In the 2 years that I've owned this knife, I probably used it about maybe 4 months in total. I wouldn't call it very sharp. It's still fairly sharp. The handles on the Wusthof Classic Icons are very comfortable. One of the most comfortable handles across any brand in general. The only complaint I have with the Classic Icons is that they tend to be a little sharp around the edges. Even though they are polished and they are finished, they just tend to be a little sharp around the corners, especially in the top of the bolster and behind the spine. And again, being heat treated to a 57, edge retention will not be the same compared to any of these other knives here. However, even after using it in my home for 3 months, I never felt that that was a problem. So that's why I encourage people who are looking for knives in this category here. You can look at edge retention, you can look at steel types, but more importantly, see how the knife feels in your hand and during usage. The next knife we have here is the Yaxell Ran. This knife here is got a Damascus cladding. It's got a VG10 core steel, heat treated to about a 61. And you've got a really nice ovalized handle, something that Yaxell does extremely well. They are very comfortable. Even if they were pressing against the palm of your hand, you're not going to have any discomfort there. Unlike the Yaxell and the Miyabi fusion knives, where the handle kind of flares out at the very bottom, these don't do that. They actually taper in. If you guys have not seen my Yaxell tour when I was in Japan, I'll hopefully link a video here or in the video description. You guys will see how Yaxell knives are put together. It was an amazing factory tour, and after you see that video, you'll get a different appreciation for Japanese knives, in particular how Yaxell knives are put together. The next knife we have here is the Yaxell Super Gou. The core steel is SG2 with a heat treatment of a 63. This next point is more cosmetics than anything else. But the Damascus cladding on the Super Gou is very different than most other Damascus cladded knives. When you look at most Damascus cladding knives, all of the pattern are pretty much evenly distributed from the top of the spine all the way down to the upper edge of the cutting edge. On the Super Gous, the pattern actually changes. They actually have a wider spacing at the very top half of the blade and a much tighter spacing at the bottom half of the blade. And so it gives the knife a very different, distinct look. I personally appreciate that about the Super Gou knives. Again, that is more cosmetics than anything else, but still something to be noted. You also have a hand-engraved etching on these knives. That is something that I really, really love. That is a whole different level of respect I had for Yaxell knives and for the hand engravers after seeing them made in person. The Super Gous go through an additional polishing process, which gives their rivets and the bolster and end cap a mirror polish relative to the Ran. I really love this knife. The SG2 core steel with the Damascus cladding and the red and black handle really gives it a distinctive look. The next 3 utility knives here are very different. They kind of sit in a different class of utility knives. Sometimes you'll see them advertised as chutoh knives, and other times you'll see them advertised as utility knives. The major differences between these knives and the other utility knives is the handles are pretty much full-size handles and very close, if not 90% or 100% of what you'll find on their chef's knives. And also the blade height on these knives are much taller than your average utility knives. The first knife we have here is the Kramer Meiji. It's using the FC61 core steel with Damascus cladding, with a vertical Damascus cladding, which is a little bit different. That's something that Kramer is very much known for. The heat treatment of this knife is 61, which is, on the medium hard scale. The fit and finish is really nice. The handle, very beautiful material and a very, very interesting pattern with this handle. However, there are a couple things about this handle that kind of throws me off. I was actually born a lefty, so when I play volleyball or throw a ball, it's all with my left hand. But I've learned to write and eat with my right because of how I was raised at home. And that's a whole different story in itself. But in my hand, when I'm holding this in a pinch grip, it's very comfortable. There are no obvious discomforts anywhere. However, in a pistol grip, the D-shaped handle on this is very protrusive and it actually is a little bit sharp for my taste. And it actually rubs against my fingers right between my joints the wrong way, and I don't really like it. In my left hand, in a pinch grip or in a pistol grip, it's very comfortable. So I'm not quite sure what the initial design of this handle was. I don't know if they actually offer both a left and a righty, but for some reason in my left hand, this feels much more comfortable both in the pinch grip and in a pistol grip. All I need to do is really smooth out the crease on this corner and it will be a very comfortable handle. Other than the very sharp apex on the right side of the handle, I've got no complaints about this knife. The next knife we have here is the Miyabi Black with the ZDP 189 core steel. This knife here has been, or this series in general, has been a very interesting series to test this year. Everyone has been asking for ZDP steels for a long time. A lot of folks really want ZDP in more affordable packages and knives that people can buy. Instead of having a knife that costs, let's say, $600 to $700, people really wanted ZDPs to cost in the $250 to $350 range, and Miyabi delivered it. However, I don't really see the adoption that people are kind of begging for, at least after this knife was released. The core steel is ZDP 189, though it's advertised as using a Quarador microcarbide steel with a heat treatment of 66. Now, personally, I don't understand why they're trying to bury the fact that it's made with ZDP 189. I'm not sure if that's a licensing disagreement or just the fact that they don't want people to associate their knives being made with ZDP 189. I think that's a mistake on their part. Having this knife with the label of ZDP 189 would definitely draw some more market attention to it. Anyways, that's just my personal take on it. And if they're not made by ZDP 189, then I might get sued for saying this, but whatever. Now, the Damascus cladding on this knife is a bit interesting. Similar to the Kramer Euro line, the Damascus cladding is a bit rough. It feels like really fine sandpaper, if I can describe it that way. It's not bothersome. It doesn't really hinder performance all that much. But when you're cutting very large potatoes and very starchy ingredients, it can stick to the blade a little bit and it can feel there's a bit more friction than ideal. I do find that roughness mostly goes away after about 3 to 4 weeks. I really like the fact that this handle here that's included is pretty much the same size handle as included on the chef knife. I have developed a bit of carpal tunnel in my wrist and my forearm. I'm not classically trained and I didn't grow up using knives and holding ingredients in my hand and carving backwards or even forwards. And so to me, I do a lot of my cutting onto the cutting board. So when I have a knife that has a bit of extra height on it, I really appreciate that. And so that's why I like the overall design of this knife here. Very well proportioned and definitely something that I really enjoy using in my kitchen. So the last knife we have here is the Miyabi Birchwood 6-inch utility knife. The overall dimensions of the blade and the handle are essentially identical to the Black series. However, you've got 101 layers of Damascus cladding, or actually 100 layers of Damascus cladding versus 132. And the handle material obviously is very different. The Birchwood is substantially lighter, and because of the weight differences in the handle materials, this knife feels a bit more nimble in your hand. Miyabi has done an amazing job with the Birchwood series of knives. The SG2 core steel is fantastic. It's just a very beautiful knife. Very well put together, very handsomely designed knife. I love the light handles of these knives. The dark marks on this handle looks like they're burn marks. Even if you pull a block set out, every handle looks a little bit different. Fit and finish, again, is fantastic. You're gonna have a really nice polished spine and a really nice polished bolster and bottom end cap. And again, you've got the large size handle that you would find on the chef knife. And so in the utility knife department, my favorite picks are as follows. The Miyabi Artisan and the Kramer Carbon are fantastic knives. Very well proportioned, beautiful fit and finish, and great choice of materials. The only reason why they're not my top picks is because they tend to be a little bit shorter than all these other knives here. And in this category of knife, I really feel like knives in the 5.5 inch and 6 inch blades are optimal. So that's why them being 5 inches long weren't my top picks. If you like more of the traditional utility blade, I think the Wusthof is a really nice one. It's about a 1/2 inch longer than all the other blades here. So if it feels a little long to you, I think that Yaxell is probably the next best pick. The Yaxell's great handles, great fit and finish overall. The hand etched engraving is beautiful. You cannot get a better finish knife than the Super Gou. As a top pick to me is the Birchwood. I really like the way it's designed. The larger handle is a huge bonus. The taller blade is also to me a really nice thing, especially for someone who makes a lot of garlic paste like myself. I really appreciate the extra height on the blade. So you may be wondering why I chose this knife over the Black series. There's really a few things. I find that on this knife, because it is a lighter handle, the knife feels a bit more nimble. The second thing is the cladding. The cladding on the Black series to me feels a bit stickier than ideal, and the cladding on this knife here, it's very well polished, and so the knife just performs better when cutting things like potatoes, which I do a lot of in my home. The third thing is the SG2 core steel. Even though it doesn't have the same edge retention as ZDP, I find that on the cutting board, SG2 has a bit more responsiveness to it, and so to me, that's a huge bonus. Again, that is very subjective. A lot of folks love the way ZDP feels. It's stiffer, just really stiff on the cutting board. To be honest, I love the ZDP. It's a really nice steel. I mean, I love the fact that edge retention in this steel is the best I've ever tested. However, edge retention is not the only thing I look for when it comes to picking a knife. Ergonomics, overall package, fit and finish all play a very big role. And to me, the whole knife is more important than one single part. And so to me, that's why the Birchwood 6-inch utility knife is the best utility knife in 2018. I will leave a link to all these knives in the video description below, and you guys can check them out and do some research on your own time. And by the way, Merry Christmas. I have 1 or 2 more knife videos at this point. Top Chef knife, and I may roll in top knife of the year in that video, and I may do a video where I picked my top 5 knives of 2018. If you guys want to see that, let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Okay, well, thank you guys for being here, and I'll catch you in the next one.